Hey friends, it's Becky L. McCoy, and this is Sucker Punched. Welcome to episode 40 of the Sucker Punch podcast. This episode was recorded at a live podcast event, so the quality of the sound is a little bit different, and sometimes we kind of had to start and stop because we had some technology issues. If you haven't been to a live podcast event, it's so awesome. I think it's one of my favorite things that I get to do. We share a meal together. We really develop deeper relationships and kind of practice developing deeper relationships. And I record a podcast episode live. So that's what you're going to hear today. If you are not local to Southeastern Connecticut, but you really want to get involved in an event, I'm hosting the Brave Together virtual retreat in September 9th. So you watch from home in your PJs. It's going to be a really encouraging time. I'm really expecting to be challenged in really great ways by the different speakers. If you'd like more information, you can go to beckylmccoy.com/Brave Together virtual retreat. No spaces or anything, just beckylmccoy.com/Brave Together virtual retreat. I really hope that I get to see you there. Until then, here is my conversation with Katie Wilson.
When I was in treatment, we would play games at night sometimes, and Jenga was one of the games they brought out, and so we told the counselors that were there, we were like, sure, you bring out, a game that takes precision with a bunch of people with anxiety disorder, shaking as they try and push it, we had some good laughs.
Yeah, about that. Okay, so before I share the whole interview with you, can we just stop for a minute and acknowledge that my friend Katie struggles with OCD, and she has such a great sense of humor about it. So as you listen to her story, which is really hard and really difficult, just know that we share a lot of giggles because it's such a great way to kind of cope with the really hard stuff. So I hope that you can find the humor in it too. So Katie, why don't you explain your diagnosis, your symptoms, and how your experience may be similar or different to others with a similar diagnosis.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah.
It'll take a few minutes.
She had the questions ahead of time. I'm not
Still a lot. So I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder in 2010 or 11. And as it turns out, I had it my whole life, but I didn't know it. I can see, once I came to know the disorder, I could see in my childhood that I had it and I struggled with it, but nobody noticed enough or noticed or knew what it was. I certainly didn't know what it was to name it. And so they were just kind of like quirks or weird things I went through, and they kind of ebbed and flowed, but they didn't alter my daily life. So I didn't pay much attention to them until I got the diagnosis, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, so I've had this my whole life. So I went to nursing school, went back to school to get a nursing degree, and that's when my anxiety first started. I first started to have a fear of harming people, which is healthy for a nurse, granted, but mine became unhealthy, and I almost quit nursing school because of it, but I persisted and just trusted that once I was educated and had the support that I would be okay, and graduated, got a job at L&M in New London, and started out on the floor, and my anxiety just grew and grew. And then I had a couple traumatic experiences on the floor that really just kind of tipped me over the edge, and it spiraled from there. I quit that job, took some time off from nursing, tried school nursing for a while, and things just got worse and worse until I quit that job. And I'm not the type to quit a job, so things were pretty bad. And then I was home for a couple months, and during that time of isolation, it blew up, and it spiraled out of control until I was almost incapacitated. So at this time, I was also pregnant with my first daughter, which complicated things as far as taking medication, or just your hormones are all over the place. But I've been seeing multiple therapists. I tried one and I tried another, and I finally found a third one who diagnosed me, but she said, "You're out of my league. You need more help than I can give you." So to give you an idea of some of my symptoms and the severity, just to give you an idea what was going on. So, well, first of all, I guess I should start with a basic explanation of OCD. I think everyone has at least a vague idea of what OCD is, because it's become more mainstream in the last 10, 20 years. But so obsessive compulsive disorder is a mental health disorder where you get stuck in a cycle of obsessive thoughts, so unwanted thoughts that cause immense distress. And then those thoughts lead to actions, the compulsive part, that you feel like, or your brain is telling you these actions will help you relieve some of the anxiety and distress you're feeling. So, and the obsessions they could be, there's thousands of different things that people with OCD obsess about, and it's really amazing just to see all the different ways it can attack a person. But for some people, it's thoughts of harming people, thoughts of being violent toward people, thoughts of becoming ill or causing illness to other people, feeling of uncleanliness. It just can reach anywhere. But that's the basis of what OCD is, and the really, like, it's just a cycle, and you can't stop it, and you can't stop it unless you have the correct tools. So my fears revolved around harming people. I had fears about, obviously, like medication mix-up as a nurse. I was stuck with a needle, so that was, I already had a healthy fear of, needles, but that really just set that off. I had a fear of becoming infected with a deadly disease. The person whose needle stuck me was Hep C positive, so I had to undergo testing for months and months. I had a fear of hitting people in my car. I had fears of saying the wrong things to people, that would be misconstrued, and there was guilt over that. So those are just kind of like the basic ones.
I really liked when you described it to me. I think a lot of us who haven't had direct contact with OCD kind of think there's that Jack Nicholson movie. What was it? Was it As Good as It Gets?
Yeah.
That one where he had OCD, and it was kind of the media classic, like turning the oven on and off 14 times and unlocking the 7 locks 14 times. But when you described it, it became really different for me, because you said that the compulsive behaviors are to alleviate the fears. So, in those examples, maybe one of his fears is his house catching on fire. So he's making sure 14 times that the oven is turned off, which makes way more sense. Like, I have a general anxiety disorder, and that makes sense to me. I'm going to do what I have to do to, be grounded in believing something. So I really like how you describe it.
Yeah, OCD is called the doubting disease because, so a person with OCD, their brain wants absolute certainty about XYZ. And if it can't be certain that if I can't be certain that I haven't harmed anyone today, then my brain is going to say, well, you better check this and check that, and call the hospital when you get home and make sure that, they check on this person and that person. Better wash your hands, just so every single time. And if it isn't quite right, start all over again. And yes, there are probably people with OCD that look like Jack Nicholson in that movie.
Right.
But the more real picture is the person sobbing over the sink because they can't stop until it feels just right. And it's been 20, 30, 45 minutes that they're in the shower. I went to treatment with a woman who And I thought I had it bad. She got stuck in the shower for 3 hours. 3 hours. And that was just one shower, like
Right.
one day, one activity. So, like, I'm glad for Jack Nicholson's character that his wasn't like that. But
Right.
the more real picture is just,
Yeah.
it can be just take over your entire life and you just can't function anymore. And that's where I was left. So, before I went into treatment, I was at home, maybe 5 months pregnant. Every surface in my house had become unclean. There's like this general sense of contamination that some people with OCD experience, and mine crept from the hospital, if you can think about that.
Personify it, yeah.
And then everything that had come in contact with the hospital or me from the hospital, slowly my whole house was contaminated. My car was contaminated in my mind. So if I touched anything, I'd have to change my clothes, take a shower, wash my hands, and I'd have to do all that just so. But eventually the couches, the table, my bed, everything was contaminated. I was sleeping on a corner of my living room on the floor, barely eating. I was, had an unborn child in me, and so that was like my greatest motivation to keep eating. But I was despairing, and
At what point did you realize that what you were experiencing was more than just like normal nurse stress, or more than the normal amount of like taking precautions and like the healthy fear you said, and knowing that you really needed some more help?
Very quickly after I started in the hospital, it was clear that I couldn't even handle 3 patients, because it would take me so long to meticulously check through all the medications, make sure I knew exactly what they were for, all the, the precautions, the dosages, the interactions. And people started saying, like, you got to hurry up. Like, you're not going to be able to do this job if you can't. And it was like, I cannot. I will not. And so it was like I had hit a wall, and I knew in my heart that I wasn't going to make it there. It was just a matter of time. But it became very clear that my anxiety was taking over. But I still hadn't been diagnosed. So it was still like, I have anxiety, but I still didn't have OCD. So I wasn't being treated. So it was like...
Right, you couldn't figure anything out.
It was running rampant.
Yeah.
There's something really special about being able to sit in a room full of women and help and encourage a friend through sharing her story. And that's what the live podcast events are all about. My team and I are working really hard to kind of take that intimacy and that really special atmosphere and recreate that in the Brave Together virtual retreat. So I know I already talked about it, but it is just so, I'm just so fired up about it, because I know that it's gonna change me. It's gonna change you. It's gonna change the way that we live, and we get to do it from our couch in our PJs. So I mean, that's just gonna be so awesome. I really hope that you can make it, and just get a chance to learn. There are some really great women that are that have messages to share with us. So it's gonna function kind of like a retreat or a conference, except it's all online. So there are 5 half-hour sessions, and then there are a few people sprinkled in between that are just sharing 5 minutes about their life and a really challenging or difficult moment in their life where they decided to live bravely. So I really hope that you'll join us. You can get your ticket at beckylmccoy.com/Brave Together Virtual Retreat. And if you're like, what is all this brave stuff? Like, I'm not brave. I don't belong. I really want to challenge you, okay? Because living bravely is so different than what we expect it's going to be. Living bravely is not doing these huge, crazy, brave things. In fact, I think it was episode 18 of the podcast. I talked about what does it really mean to live bravely. And I bet that you're braver than you think. So I wrote a quiz. It's called the How Brave Are You quiz. You can just go to beckylmccoy.com/quiz and take it. I bet you're going to be surprised by the results. If you take it, let me know. You can find me on social media, pretty much everywhere, at Becky L. McCoy. Let me know what your quiz results were, or send me an email, info@beckylmccoy.com. I really want to know what you think about it. And if you sign up for the retreat, let me know. You can find the Facebook event. You can find the Brave Together Facebook group. That you don't have to go to the retreat to be part of that group. You can just join us, where we're all kind of linking arms and trudging through life together, and just really creating community and friendships. Sometimes social media is a discouraging place, but it's really important to me to also create really special and safe communities. So take the quiz, and I really especially hope that you'll join me at the Brave Together virtual retreat, because I'm making it just for you. Here is the rest of my conversation with Katie.
What did seeking help look like for you?
So here I was in this terrible state, and we have friends that live up in the Boston area, and they said, we know of this hospital that has a program just for OCD, and it's a residential program. You go there and you live for up to 12 weeks. You should apply. So immediately we started that process, and they said it'd probably be a couple of weeks at least. The waiting list was like weeks to months, and my husband and I were like, every day feels like a week or a month. Like, how are we gonna do this? But thank God it all moved really quickly. We went up after a couple of days to meet people and tour the facility, and on our way home they called and they said, can you be here tomorrow morning? We have a bed. And we were like, yes. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had been praying and asking anyone and everyone to pray with us, and
Yeah.
it was amazing. So I hadn't even packed much, but we showed up the next morning, and
What was that like, being inpatient?
so there were probably about 30 patients, and it's like living at a dorm at a college, kind of. It's like this old, brick building on a hospital campus. You have a roommate all of a sudden, so it's like being thrown back into college, but you're,
in the worst possible
in the worst
way.
possible way, yeah. There's no fun, there's no parties. No, that's not true. We did have fun. So yeah. So you get a treatment team, and there's coaches or counselors around. It's like you have this huge safety net all of a sudden, all around you, and they know exactly what they're doing, and they are so ready to help you. But what you have to be ready to do is face every one of your worst fears head on and expose yourself to them. So I knew that going into it. They're like, this is going to be the hardest thing you ever did in your life. And I was like, what other choice do I have? Like,
Yeah.
I cannot be a mother. I cannot be a wife. So I was like, if there is hope out there, because I didn't know my diagnosis, so I didn't know there was hope.
Yeah.
I just thought this was going to get worse and worse, and I was going to live in this, eternal awfulness. So
Yep.
I dove in feet first, head first, whatever first. And I was all in.
Cannonball.
Whatever they wanted me to do. And so part of the therapy for OCD is called exposure and response prevention. So they expose you expose yourself to your fear, and then you prevent the response, the negative response. So, for example, I was given a bag with a bunch of Band-Aids with red marks on them, and I was to take them out, hold the Band-Aid in my hand, rub it all over my body, whatever, and then sit there and resist the urge to obviously wash, resist the urge to look at my hands to see if the red had rubbed off, resist the urge to assure myself mentally that it probably isn't blood, because they wouldn't give me blood. I had to tell myself over and over, I am holding someone's blood in my hand. It is infected with a disease. I am going to get infected. I'm going to die. I had to give myself the worst scenario, and the theory, and it actually works, is that over time your brain reconditions, and like the anxiety comes down, you habituate to it, and you can actually reprogram your brain chemistry to to reality, essentially.
That is so crazy.
So, we started out with small things, small fears, and worked our way up. And you always had support, but we did exposure and response prevention, ERP, 4 hours a day, and then you were encouraged, obviously, to do it, resist 24/7, because you wanted to stop feeding the beast, essentially.
Yeah.
Because the more you feed him OCD, I try and keep OCD as he's a separate entity from myself.
Yeah.
He's like the liar that lives in my brain. But the more you feed OCD with these rituals, like the washing, the more OCD wants more complex rituals. So you have to stop it completely and not give him like a foothold at all.
Yeah.
So that's what treatment looked like. And, to give you an idea, by the end of treatment, I was walking around Harvard Square shaking homeless people's hands. And then I was not allowing myself to look at my hands or wash or anything. I had to go buy an apple and eat the apple and live with the doubt that who knows what was on their hands, and now who knows what was inside of me and my child. And I'd shake people's hands, I'd give high fives to everybody with my dirty hands. But if you had told me I was going to be doing that 5.5 weeks earlier, I would have been like, you are crazy and I'm not going there.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, and it works. So that's what treatment looked like in a nutshell.
Do you feel like now that you have a diagnosis, that was about 6 years ago now, do you feel like you have a really good handle on what your triggers are and what kind of helps you prevent from going back to that dark place?
Yeah. I know what my triggers are. The nasty thing about OCD is sometimes it comes up with new triggers. So it'll be like, oh, all of a sudden I have this new fear of, XYZ. And it's like, okay. And the trick is identifying it as OCD. So I have so many tools and so much experience from my 5.5 weeks there to fall back on that usually I'm able to tackle whatever gets thrown at me. I will never go back to the dark place, because I know, like the dark place, because I know that I know what I cannot do to feed OCD to get, to spiral back toward there. At least I hope I won't. I guess I don't know what the future holds, but I have a friend who's already been back to the institute, the OCD Institute, again, since she was there with me. She was my roommate. So for some people, it's not, their progress is different than mine. But
it does seem to be, as I talk with different people, and I know my own experience, that once you have a diagnosis, it's still really difficult and kind of scary, really scary, but it's not, you don't feel as powerless when you can kind of, like you said, like you keep it separate, like your OCD is not part of who you are, it's just something that you deal with, and you know how to deal with it, and it doesn't mean you won't ever struggle with it, but it's something that you can like name and work with.
Yeah.
Instead of being the mysterious hard thing that you'll never get away from.
Yes, having a diagnosis was a game changer for me. Like someone saying, this is what you have, this is what it does, how it works, and this is how we treat it. I was like, aha, great, then now we can do something,
Yeah.
Like now I have hope, because for so long I didn't have any hope.
Yeah.
And just being able to name it, and even when my anxiety flares up, being able to name it and be like, that's OCD, I have an anxiety disorder, and kind of say, okay, here it is again. And I think, we've had conversations before. It's like, it'll come, it'll go. Like, let's ride out this storm.
Yep.
And being able to name it and just kind of watch it, try and put it out here and say, this is my anxiety disorder. I'm gonna ride this wave. It'll come, it'll go, but it's not me, and it's not gonna last forever.
To what extent do you feel like OCD has changed your life or impacted your daily life?
It has completely changed my life. I mean, for good, mostly for good, which might sound strange, but obviously it has taken away a lot of things. It took away nursing, and I recently gave up my degree, my license, because I can't mm-hmm. see myself going back. I don't think it would be healthy, and I don't want to. Mm-hmm. And it's taken away some of my confidence for sure. Mm-hmm. But it has, I could make a list of the ways that it has brought, what's the word? Blessings into my life. It's definitely made me, grown me. It's made me able to empathize with people more, mm-hmm. to connect with people who are in the middle of trial or suffering or crisis. It's made me be able to love people better, be more thankful for what I have every single day, that mm-hmm. I can be a mother, the simplest of things. It's made me not take things for granted. I feel like I had more to this answer before I started talking,
That's
but
okay.
there are definitely days when I'm like, I hate OCD, and mm-hmm. and I hate that I have to live with this probably for the rest of my life if God chooses not to heal me of it. And but despite that, I can be thankful because I see God redeeming my suffering in so many ways and using it for His glory. Mm-hmm. I can see just He allows.
So I'm not really sure what happened to the rest of our conversation because there was more, which is strange. I'm telling you, this whole podcast episode was like one giant technical difficulty, which happens. So I appreciate your understanding. But I can imagine you feel this way, that all of Katie's words and her story are just so encouraging. I am grateful to call her friend personally in life, to get to watch her mother her children, to just see the ways that she has decided to cope with OCD and not let it control her or the fear dictate how she lives, but not living in denial either. And really, like you heard her say, embracing the ways that it's changed her in really good ways and the really positive things that she's learned because of her experience with OCD. So I'm just really grateful that she agreed to share this part of her story with us, and I really hope that actually I'm pretty confident that there's somebody out there that needed to hear Katie's story, just as an encouragement and kind of a virtual hug to keep going. That is it for episode 40. I hope that this was a bright moment in your day, even if it was a difficult conversation. Be sure to check out the Brave Together virtual retreat at BeckyAllenMcCoy.com/Brave Together virtual retreat, and join me on social media. I am on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Facebook and Instagram are really my favorites. Probably mostly Instagram, but Facebook is nice too because you can have more conversation. Anyways, I'm everywhere at Becky L. McCoy, and I would love to get to know you. Hope everyone is having a great week, and I'll talk to you next Thursday. Bye.